Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished individual from Singapore, Erin Lee Jia-Ning. Erin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Ashutosh.
Thank you. Erin is the founder of Mindful Moments in Singapore. She's a coach and a trainer. So, and let's start talking about mindful moments. Tell me about this venture.
Sure. I first started it in 2013,
Mhm,
thereabouts. And what I had, my intention was to basically propagate the seeds of mindfulness. I
mhm,
had started meditating and I had gotten myself trained as a
mhm,
mindfulness teacher,
mhm,
specifically a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher.
mhm,
And meditation had really changed my life. And I wanted to really help people, support people by introducing them to the practice
mhm,
and basically to share with more people how mindfulness could benefit their lives. And mindful moments, because I found so much value in just taking each moment as it comes.
mhm,
And so even as we are introducing mindfulness to people's lives, even if they're just able to pay attention to themselves
mhm.
and pay mindful awareness for just even one moment, it can be really valuable for them.
Wonderful. So, before I go any further, for our viewers and listeners, what is mindfulness?
So there are different definitions out there, and I like
Mhm,
to use one that I
mhm,
find is most helpful in
mhm.
understanding or just gaining a basic understanding.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is really just clearly knowing what is happening inside of us,
Okay.
outside of us in each
Mhm.
moment. As
Okay.
simple as that. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So, when I was looking at your website, I was fascinated by a quote which says, "What does it mean to be alive?" Help me understand this quote, because I'm sure it means much more than just the words. And if possible,
Yes.
give me an example.
Mm. Well, it wasn't until I was about 30 years old
Mhm,
when I realized that I really wasn't living.
mhm,
And my past notions or perceptions about living was vastly different than what I have now.
mhm,
I realized with meditation, with mindfulness, that I was basically living on autopilot all the time.
mhm,
And I was just allowing moment after moment to pass me by. So I was allowing a lot of habitual patterns and behaviors to drive my everyday life. And I was never really awake to myself or the way that I lived or my relationship with this world that
mhm,
I'm inhabiting. So mindfulness has really changed that for me. And by being alive, I don't mean that it's not so much about smelling the roses.
mhm,
It's not so much about enjoying life and indulging in sensual pleasures.
mhm,
It's really about coming to know yourself.
mhm,
And from these insights through observing ourselves, we understand a lot about, hey, how did I get here?
mhm.
And how am I going to move forward in this world? So yeah, that was the insight I gained about being alive.
How fascinating. So, I also wanted to understand from you how you work with different people. You know, uh, if I was to come to you and say, Erin, help me become more mindful, how would you start the whole process?
Well, I would first understand how you're living,
Mhm,
the way that you're living, um, primarily through your day to day life. That's the most telling. So I don't ask people about success or
mhm,
achievements. I go into the nitty gritties of how they're living their day to day routines.
mhm,
And primarily what they would like to work on. But if from the lens of mindfulness, really it's about acquiring the skills
mhm.
that we need to be able to live more wisely and to be able to cultivate healthier behaviors for ourselves. So,
Okay.
how I work with people is to understand, besides how they're living from day to day life, is also to teach them how to integrate the skills of mindfulness into their day to day life. So, people may come to me for personal coaching,
Mhm,
mindfulness coaching, and I spend weekly sessions with them,
mhm,
guiding them through practices helping them inquire into their practice experience so that they make sense of it and be able to understand why they're practicing and why it's important in their day-to-day lives. I help them to design their way of life in such a way that they're living more mindfully, incrementally, as we progress along the weeks, and to also commit themselves to this change that they want for themselves. So this is the individual work that I do with people. I also do group work. So I work with different organizations or corporates or institutions to deliver workshops, programs, courses. Yeah.
Interesting. And you also mentioned somewhere that being mindful will help us to prevent challenges of mental health. Help me understand this.
Sure. Mindfulness is really a preventative approach, and it's not a cure
Mhm,
for mental problems or mental health or emotional issues. It's preventative because when we are practicing mindfulness,
mhm,
we are really practicing the skills so that we are better prepared for challenges or difficulties or struggles or adversity without getting into the ultimate breakdown of our mind body system. And by learning to observe ourselves with mindful awareness, we're really, gaining insight into the nature of the mind and being able to tell certain signs or symptoms or triggers of stress, for example,
mhm,
and to be able to preempt ourselves and more readily with the skills of mindfulness, bring ourselves back to a state of balance
mhm,
so that we can better recalibrate, we can regulate ourselves better
mhm,
before the ultimate breakdown of the system. So this is why it is preventative
mhm.
rather than a cure.
Wow. And a lot of mindfulness matters have been written about in Buddhism, in Hinduism, in Jainism. Where are you drawing a lot of your knowledge and wisdom from?
So I started with Vipassana meditation,
Okay,
and it is really insight meditation,
correct.
observing the mind, the body for the way they are.
Mhm,
And I was also particularly interested in the secular practice of mindfulness
mhm,
because of my background and the work that I worked in a corporate life for 10 years.
mhm,
And I understand that not everyone is maybe receptive towards more religious based
mhm.
practices or spiritual based practices.
Correct.
So my training lies in more science based or
Mhm,
empirically based practices,
mhm,
although I draw a lot of my personal practice from studying and practicing the Buddha Dharma.
mhm.
Although when I bring my work out into the world, I'll have to see who I may be bringing this to,
Sure.
and just as a skillful means to be able to explain the essence of
Mhm,
living a mindful life to them,
mhm.
depending on what they may be open to.
Fascinating. So, you've been doing a lot of work with so many people. Uh, what do you think, or what do you see are some of the mental health challenges we are beginning to face or we are facing in today's world? And what can we do about this?
I think, there are so many, risk factors that contribute to mental
Mhm,
health problems nowadays. It could be internal, external, it could be environmental, social. And from the lens of mindfulness, I find that we're just not paying enough attention to ourselves, right? Everything around us serves to pull our attention away
mhm,
from the internal environment, the experience, and so we've really lost touch with ourselves. And based on how the modern world and modern life is working right now, our attention becomes really fragmented, and this of course has an impact on our well-being when the mind cannot be settled and still.
mhm,
So from the mindfulness approach, we're really um, advocating paying attention to the self,
mhm.
not in a very egoistic or self-indulgent way, but being
Right.
able to observe ourselves non-judgmentally and be able to be more in touch with the nature of the mind
Mhm,
and also the body and how we may be responding or reacting to some of the stresses or difficulties that life may be giving us, especially in this pandemic period.
mm,
So for example, a lot of us might be feeling like we're busier than usual,
mm,
even during the COVID period. And the boundaries between work and life have been blurred even
mm,
further. People are working longer hours. They feel isolated and lonely.
mm,
And without this capacity to pay attention to ourselves, it's very easy for us to get overwhelmed by some emotions that we may be facing, or we may relate to our thoughts in a very unhealthy way, for example,
mm,
or indulge in unhealthy behaviors.
mm, mm,
So, this is where we come in with mindfulness practice, where you become more aware of how you're living your life and how you're responding to
mm,
what life gives you. And again, this comes back to being able to recalibrate ourselves and to regulate ourselves in times of struggle.
mm. So, you just referred to the challenges the pandemic has thrown for us. And this is something which is not unique to any individual country, but it's the entire world. What has the pandemic done to mental health? And how is mindfulness going to help us manage that?
Um, so, I think there's a lot of grief
Mhm,
going on. There's a lot of uncertainty,
mm,
definitely. And from what I have observed and also surveyed around me, for example, here in Singapore, I do hear a lot of us saying that we feel very stuck,
mhm,
like we're stuck. And I think it's not just about not being able to travel overseas,
mm,
even though borders are opening right now, but things are still uncertain. And I
mm,
think people are not uh, we're trying really hard to adapt,
mm,
and certain uncertainties from the pandemic is probably making us feel more fearful
mhm,
than usual and more anxious than usual. We don't know when this might end, or it seems like the process is really slow, and we're keen to just get back to our normal ways of
mm,
life.
mm,
And I think what the value of mindfulness is really allowing us to be able to take things one day at a time,
mhm,
one moment at a time. And it's not that the future is not important. It is important, right? We have to put in effort to collectively work towards and progress
mm,
towards a future that's healthier, that's more functional. But when certain things are out of our control, um, and we are reacting to things that are out of our control, and this of course has an impact on our well-being. So how
mhm,
are we able to manage that with mindful awareness and just being able to cultivate an open, non-judgmental attitude with a certain level of acceptance towards what we can't control, and
mhm,
just be able to settle the mind and body a little and just be at ease
mm,
with the conditions that the world is presenting to us right
mm.
now.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And my next question to you, Erin, would be what is the role yoga plays in mindfulness?
Right. So I am not a yoga teacher.
Mhm,
I do practice some yoga. I'm not an expert in it, but we do incorporate yoga
mhm,
or yoga-like or yoga-inspired movements
mhm,
in mindfulness practices.
mhm,
And this serves the intention of paying attention to the body.
mhm,
In mindfulness practice, it is really crucial for us to pay more attention to the body because the body can tell us a lot about our state of mind, about our state of health, and a way of being. And so when we practice, say, mindful movements or yoga movements,
mhm,
and we pay attention, we slow the process down, we really pay attention to the sensations in the body, we're really allowing ourselves to become more sensitive to the body and also to cultivate, again, a kind of non judgmental awareness
mhm.
towards what the body may be telling us.
Correct.
And this definitely can positively impact our well being as
Mhm.
well.
And I guess Tai Chi does exactly the same thing. I mean, slow
Absolutely.
movements and thinking about everything that you're doing.
Yes.
Wonderful. Um, so I'm going to ask you a question which may be a little challenging you, but how do I know that your teachings are working for me?
That's an interesting question. And first of
Mm,
all, I'd like to suggest reframing that question.
okay.
It's not so much my teachings,
Mhm.
it's really about the practice of mindfulness. And
Okay.
I have been asked this question a lot before. So
Okay.
usually people want to know that the time and effort that they're investing in this practice
Mhm.
gives some kind of returns.
Correct.
So, how do you know if this practice is working for you?
Mhm.
And I would say that, you know, it really boils down to the way that you're living your life on a day-to-day basis, and do you observe any changes in yourself, right, in terms of your routine, how you're living your day-to-day routines,
Mhm.
your relationship with stress, your decision making. You can observe your behaviors. So an example might be if someone came to me to work on their reactivity, emotional reactivity.
Mhm.
So let's say they are they find themselves to be quite impatient, or they get angry or triggered really easily. And maybe before you started practicing mindfulness, something used to bother you for days and
Mhm.
weeks to no end, and you lose sleep over it. And with continuous and consistent and effective practice, do you notice a change in yourself, in the way that you process things? And maybe now it just takes you 3 days and you're feeling okay.
Mhm.
And as you practice more, maybe you're fine in 1 day or half a day or 30 minutes or even 5 minutes, and you're back to a state of
Okay.
balance. So this is really about building your resilience and your ability to readily come back to a state of equilibrium for yourself.
So I guess what you're saying is there's a lot of self-assessment and self-judgment in my
Absolutely.
understanding of mindfulness, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So my next question to you is that in today's world where there are stresses and today's world is really the younger generation who's taking charge of a world which my generation seems to have messed up very badly. How are the millennials and the Gen Zs coping with their own challenges in such a highly stressed world?
Well, from what I have been observing and fortunately witnessing is that the younger generations, I mean, I'm a millennial,
Mhm.
and I'm also observing the Gen Zs as well. And I find that we collectively are more open
Mhm.
to conversations, specifically about mental health.
Mhm.
And it doesn't used to be as taboo as it was before, and people are more open to exploring it and being able to talk about it and not feel as much shame about it being a condition that they may be facing.
Mhm.
And also, I do witness a readiness to explore options for themselves and to seek resources
Mhm.
that may work for them. And I think we collectively, the younger generations also feel more compelled. They take ownership, more
Mhm.
ownership of their mental health. And they say,
Correct.
oh, let me explore what could work for me, and not just for me, but for the community that
Mm.
I'm a part of. And let's collectively work towards a better humanity.
Mm.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So I have time for two more questions, and I'm going to come back to mindful moments. Uh, Talk to me about two of your initiatives, which are Take a Pause, and the other one is the Big Sit.
Yes, I'd love to share. So Take a Pause is an online virtual community that I have sort of put together via the platform Insight Timer.
Mhm.
And whoever is interested in practicing very foundational, no frills mindfulness, they can feel that they can just log onto the app and join
Mhm.
the live event. So it's a live practice session, and it's really simple. I'm just guiding a practice for about half an hour, and I introduce the practice of mindfulness once a week. And I also close each session with a reading that I
Mhm.
curate from a book or from an article or from some poetry. And I invite everyone to practice mindful listening with me. So it's really a chance for us to just take a pause. It's on a Sunday night. So just before you begin the week, maybe we
Mhm.
can bring ourselves back to more stillness and
Mhm.
more a state of balance. So that's Take a Pause.
Mhm.
And the Big Sit is really interesting. This started in Singapore on Mindfulness Day in 2020 in the pandemic, during the pandemic itself. And we had wanted to explore bringing meditation
Mhm,
mindfulness to a public urban space, and just have everybody have a different way of socializing since we're
mhm,
all isolated. Just to come together, and even though we're not mingling, we're not talking or chatting, we are sharing this collective stillness and this shared value of well-being, the importance of well-being.
mhm,
So the big sit, so we have done several runs now, about 10 runs in Singapore now,
mhm,
on like a once a month basis, where we just gather at a public space. And in Singapore, we had chosen the CBD area, one of the most stressful and busiest
mhm,
areas.
mhm.
And it's quite phenomenal just to have a group of people settle and sit for an hour and just to practice.
Wow.
And the Big Sit has also expanded to the City of London as well. And we
Mhm.
have a team there also organizing the Big Sit on a regular basis.
Wow. So I've got to ask you a couple of more questions, and these are for you personally.
Sure.
For someone who understands mindfulness, who spent time in the corporate world, who's helping so many different people, what does success mean to Erin?
I've always had some trouble with this question, Ashutosh, because I've never been able to, even having worked in the corporate world, I've never been able to define what success means to
Mhm.
me, and being able to reconcile what success means to the majority of people out there. And I often ask people this question.
Okay.
So I guess from just, through reflection and contemplation, I think success to me and in my field of work means that I'm able to bring um, value to people's well being.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm able to witness this in the work that I do, then I feel a lot of joy in me. And it can be just something as simple as someone being able to pick up mindfulness and saying, oh, I know how this helps me now. And
Mm-hmm.
I am making better decisions for myself,
Mm.
and I'm experiencing more peace. And being able to hear this from people and witness this, I think it's very precious to me.
Wow. And my last question to you now, and this is a question on failure. You know, most of us in India or South Asia or even Southeast Asia have not been taught it's okay to fail. We've always been taught come first in class, go to the head of the line, etc., etc. And yet we fail, we learn. So my question to you, Erin, is what have been some of your learnings from some of your mistakes?
I too grew up in a culture where meritocracy and everybody's just striving to achieve, and
Mm,
I really struggled with this.
mm,
And I think um, it's not really about um, so I think with me, the biggest misunderstanding, I wouldn't say it's a mistake,
mhm,
but it's the biggest misunderstanding that I've had about myself,
mhm,
about my place in this world, was that I'm alone, or
mhm,
that I function alone.
mhm,
And this is something that quite, in some way, ironically, that mindfulness or meditation has taught me.
mhm,
So even though mindfulness or meditation, the practice itself is quite an individual endeavor, but
mhm,
it is through this individual practice that I realized that, hey, I'm really not alone. Because, for example, if I had to do my work as a mindfulness teacher, I do need the support of so many people around me, directly or indirectly.
mhm,
And when I was going through some really hard times, I used to think that I was all alone, I was isolated, and I didn't have to answer to anybody. And whatever I did was nobody else's business.
mhm,
But I couldn't have been more wrong, because it is through being aware of myself and my relationships that I realized that
mhm,
I am part of this common humanity. And this is one of the biggest learnings, because this learning has um, uh, driven so much of my work out
mhm.
there, engaging people, bringing people together to practice mindfulness and meditation. This is one of the biggest learnings that
Wow.
I've had.
Wow. Oh, wonderful. On that note, I think I just want to thank you. It's been such an incredible conversation. Thank you for talking to me at so much length about mindfulness. I've learned so many new things from you. Thank you for all the help that you are giving so many different people. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Thank you for listening to the brand called You Videocast and Podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.